We're looking at something called pick up where you left off.
In the past year, maybe a little bit more, we've had two, what I would consider to be major features.
Just in the last year, I think it was over 300 customer ideas across all of PeopleSoft.
What is PeopleSoft's direction in regards to AI and generative AI?
If I can add one thing to that feature that I like, is that there are actionable items so that...
Thank you, Russell, for joining Nicole and I for this episode of the PeopleSoft Oracle Aces podcast. Before we get started, Russell, I wonder if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to introduce yourself to those who might not know you within the PeopleSoft community.
Okay, great. Well, first off, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for including me. As Jim said, I'm Russell Broom and the Vice President of PeopleSoft Strategy. Actually have dual roles. I'm also the Vice President of Development for HCM, ELM, and CRM. Although I'm new to this role in the last year, actually stepped in the shoes of both Rebecca Jackson, who retired, as well as Robin Valiadum, that moved on, but have been around a long time. I'm coming up on my 30 years working on PeopleSoft HCM. I've been in consulting, helping customers implement the software. I moved into development and was the overall architect of the HCM product line, and then took over the VP of development probably in 2018, and then moved into this role last year. So very happy to be with you here today.
Yes, thank you, Russell. And Russell and I met, hard to believe it was this long ago, but it was easily over 15 years ago at some CAB meetings. Russell was there for the HCM-focused cabs, and I was there for the PeopleTools-focused cabs. And we were rotating, swapping between sessions. So I would go to an HCM session to talk about PeopleTools, and then Russell would go to a PeopleTools-focused cab meeting to talk about the HR product. So very grateful to know Russell. And also, one of the things that kind of excited me while talking to Russell was because Russell, working on the HR side, I oftentimes think of HR as a very functional role. And Russell had a very deep technical knowledge as well, which was pretty exciting for me being from a technical background. So Russell, today we'd like to talk to you about HCM PUM 51 for starters, and then also what's coming, some new features. Like, for example, I met with Graham Smith and Kyle Benson last month to talk about PeopleTools 862, and we were talking about, say, for example, the dynamic home pages feature. So after we talk about PUM 51, I would love to talk to you about some of these new features in PeopleTools 862 and how the HCM team would like to adopt those. And because I know those are forward thinking, I wanted to make sure I had on the screen the Oracle Safe Harbor statement, just to give you the freedom to talk about anything that might be future thinking, future direction with the product. So let's go ahead and talk about PUM 51. So I'm going to bring the document from the PDF document describing the new features in PUM 51. And Russell, any highlights from PUM 51 that you think are, well, obviously the whole thing's important, but something that you thought would be good to highlight?
Actually, a couple of things. The first one, of course, is the approval insights for managers. So that's kind of our first step towards building indexes and visualizations to kind of help out with the approval process, because every customer has SLAs about how often they need to respond to approvals to keep business flowing. We actually got this request from one of our defense customers that I won't name, but they were struggling to do reporting because there's not a lot of delivered reporting. And as you know, the table structures are extremely complex, so it's really hard to run queries off of every different type of approval, because you have to basically join in a lot of different tables. So it makes it very difficult. So we thought this was our first step in trying to visualize where things are. We decided to focus first on managers so they could actually go and look and see how their directs or indirects are doing around the approval process for different business processes. So right now it's only in HCM and it's targeted for the manager, but in the future, and this is where the safe harbor applies, both financials and HCM are looking at bringing this capability to more of the administrator role, because a lot of administrators are the ones that get the question, oh, what's going on in my organization? Why is this taking so long? And then they have to try to figure out, how do I get this information? So although we started with the manager, we're going to move that on as well to other target users so they can leverage the same functionality.
And Russell,
Oh, I'm
on
sorry, go
that
ahead.
feature, so well, you just mentioned something very important. So if you look through the AWE metadata and the configurations for AWE, you see the header records and the cross-reference records for AWE, and those cross-reference records take you to the I call them the transaction logs for AWE. And like you mentioned, every single transaction has different keys, which means every single transaction has a different header or line level record, which could be incredibly complicated. So that's amazing that you guys built this out. But I think you just said something else that's really important, future thinking. If we look at enterprise components, they're tools built by apps teams, shared across apps teams. And so the approval insights, HCM approval insights, if we were to push that out to financials or someone else, while the concept and the idea might be centralized, every app would have to build that uniquely, wouldn't they? Because every record is going to be different for those insights.
That's probably why we've never done anything until now. The other thing too is that, one of the beauties of using OpenSearch and Insights is it doesn't hit the production app server. So if you're trying to run queries and reports off the production data in production, it would run slow. And so this is a great use case to leverage the visualization tool that's kind of external, to the PeopleSoft database and the production app server, so it runs well. So really, this is really our beginning. What we always tell customers is that this is the starting point. It may not have every visualization you need or look at the exact metrics you want, but it's a great start. You can take it, clone it, and then add in whatever you need from a visualization standpoint, because we did the hard part, which was building the search index off of all those tables that you were talking about.
Right. And so along with that, I assume RTI is in there, real-time
Yes,
indexing?
it sure is. It
Yeah.
sure is.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for sharing about that feature.
No
And I
problem.
guess if I can add one thing to that feature that I'll say I like is that there are actionable items so that within it, someone can send notification to James saying, do your approvals. So I
Yeah.
thought that that was interesting because a lot of the insights right now are less about, and now I'm going to take this action and follow up. And so I don't know if that's going to be a trend going forward, but I liked that part of it.
Oh, that's great feedback, and you're exactly right. That's the main thing that I didn't say, is that really the actionable piece is drilling into the approval. Maybe you want to go and look at the details, maybe reassign to somebody else. Once you get into the approval straight from that insight, you can do anything. And the second option is just what you said: notify someone, hey, why is this taking so long? Move this around, or I'm about to reassign this to somebody else, or whatever. So it's a great feature. And yes, we're looking at always including that now that we're into the notification composer approach, and doing notifications a lot more everywhere. You'll see this more and more in a lot of our insights, because that's exactly what people want to do, is notify someone about something they need to do.
Fantastic. So the next one, and you've actually kind of started talking about this notification composer, but page and field configurator change tracking notifications. So the notification composer would be the foundation for that. And then page and field configurator having the change tracking feature is another piece. So those are two separate pieces, but PUM 51, HCM PUM 51, and then I saw in the notes, FSCM PUM 52, bring those two together to allow you to do change tracking, or shall we say use notification composer with change tracking to notify somebody when the system, or we identify a change. The notification composer, I found that to be a big change for customers. What's your experience with that?
That's a great question. So we get a lot of feedback that notification composer is a beast. It basically changes everything. Really, the history is that we've had, since like 8 8.0 tools, there was the ability to send emails, and over time, PeopleTools kept adding new frameworks or new APIs and new capabilities. And we were doing the release to release, like 8.9, 9.0, 9.1. We didn't go and clean up everything. So what it led to is like a Frankenstein approach to notifications across the board. So what we decided to do is finally bite the bullet and go through all of our delivered notifications and adopt Notification Composer, because it gives organizations the ability to have any notification be an email, an in-app notification, which means that it shows up in PeopleSoft on the current homepage, or even text messaging. So it puts into the administrator's fingertips the notification strategy they want for every single notification. Plus, the big thing is now it's all configuration based. In past releases, like if something was a trigger business event, which is kind of our old workflow-based notifications, and you didn't want something, you had to actually find it in the code and comment it out, or open App Designer and delete a routing. I mean, there's all kinds of things you had to do. Now all you have to do is basically mark something as inactive, or you can go and turn the configuration off. So everything now is not only bringing email, in-app, and text, but it's also everything now is configuration based. And plus, now you can actually personalize. So if you're an organization that allows the employee to choose what notifications they want, maybe what method, whether it's text messaging or email, all that now is at your fingertips, that you can configure to allow the users or not to choose whether they get the notification and really what the delivery method is. So a great framework.
Yes, and I noticed that it looked like PeopleTools built a side of this, and then Enterprise Components built a side as well. The two go together. It's like I didn't notice, like a lot of times PeopleTools will build something and then developers could build on top of that or just use that as just PeopleTools. Activity guides, for example, they exist all by themselves, whereas there's Activity Guide Composer and Enterprise Components. But as I was looking at Notification Framework, I could clearly see that the Enterprise Components piece, but I don't know that I got a feel for how would you use just the PeopleTools notifications piece by itself without Enterprise Components?
That's a great question. So typically what we do in the application is, if you look at like Activity Guide Composer, that was kind of the same approach. PeopleTools delivered activity guides, and then we built a framework. We did the same thing around notifications because of two reasons. Number one, if it's just in PeopleTools, it makes it a lot harder. If you need brand new functionality and there's a major data model change or something, you have to wait for the next tools release, which, as you know, that could be 2, 3, or 4 years before many customers get it. Or if there's a bug, they have to apply a patch. And so we're trying to do more and more in Enterprise Components because that gives flexibility for the delivery of updates in the future, patches, things like that. And really what we do is we build like a front-end framework that makes it easier to actually tap into PeopleTools notifications, just like we did with activity guides. So that's the main reason why we delivered the framework. We did it to kind of insulate customers from the patching that we talked about, and really just to provide a lot more functionality for customers to leverage as a result of us delivering it through Enterprise Components.
Yes, fantastic. So what would you say to a customer? And correct me, I think was it PUM 49 where the approval workflow engine adopted Notifications Composer? I guess the release doesn't matter. But as customers get current and start migrating to just getting current, are they forced to upgrade their AWEs to Notification Composer, or is that a choice during the upgrade or get current?
It's another great question. We get SRs all the time that's like, oh, all of a sudden, something's changed and I don't know what it is. And we did make it optional. But this time around, to try to incent customers to start leveraging it, we did include a step in the change package that once you get Notification Composer, either you select it or you're getting current, or you select a feature that requires it, it brings that into your change package. And it actually has a manual stop. And basically the manual stop basically means, hey, the execution is going to stop and it's going to basically, require you to go and look at, oh, well, why is this stopping? And we have a link to a MOS document that has all the FAQs, what the framework does, what our approach is, et cetera. So you could skip this altogether. And so it gives instructions about how to turn it off. But what we found is many customers, just continued on and didn't realize that it was actually upgrading their AWE events, notifications, basically, to the new approach. But for many customers, it was seamless. For others, they didn't realize what it did and then had trouble when they tried to migrate things to production. So there's a lot of different feedback from everywhere. I think the main thing is that we don't have today a lot of information other than what's on Moss and in PeopleBooks. And I think Nicole said this to me at one point, is that customers find it daunting, right? It's not a small framework, tons of functionality, affects a lot. And so some customers have deferred that and, until they're ready to start adopting it and figuring out what they want to do. The good thing I will say, I know I'm rambling a good bit, is in the conversion, it actually looks at your settings in AWE. So if you currently are only sending an email, that it will allow you to choose that. It's like, it gives you a couple of different options. You want to use what we deliver as best practice, or do you want to take what you have and convert it to Notification Composer? If you convert what you have, it keeps everything exactly the same. If you were getting an email as an approver before, like when someone submitted something, it would keep it that way. And it would actually generate the Notification Composer configuration based off your existing configuration. So where we see that most customers had a problem is when they didn't convert what they had and chose what we deliver. So what we did is anything that goes to an email or a manager is always email, and anything in the app for the admin, the administrative area, was an in-app notification. And sometimes that didn't match up with what they currently had, and they ran into issues. So that's pretty much, I guess, my summary about Notification Composer.
Yeah, thank you. So as I was going through the Notification Composer, like you mentioned, I found there were so many different metadata pieces that, and as Nicole mentioned, daunting because it seemed large. And like you mentioned, Russell, it makes sense to centralize the notification concept. And I also like that it has, like multiple channels, not to steal like the title from MCF, but really you've got the email channel, the texting channel, and the in-app, the bell channel. One of the things that I saw that I thought was so cool, and this is where I said, I love Notification Composer. And that was when I saw the data type, and forgive me, I think it's applications. Anyways, it's not questionnaires, it's not activity guides. It's not, it was the other one. But what I loved about it was the event mapping button. And so what I could do was create a notification and then map that to any content reference, or we might say component, and then the notification would trigger on save. So just to give you an example, a direct deposit, in my opinion, is a very sensitive piece of information because a bad actor who phishes an account can log in, change somebody's direct deposit information to offshore, and then steal the paycheck. And it's never recovered because it goes to an offshore account. So the change tracking with event mapping, the Notifications Composer with event mapping allows us to map no code, just configuration, click the buttons, and it will create the event mapping for the Notification Composer. So when somebody changes direct deposit, I get a text message that says, your direct deposit information has changed. Was that you? If not, then, be afraid, whatever. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. I forgot to mention one of the other benefits of the framework is that you, as a customer, can create your own notifications using event mapping, exactly what you just said. The good thing is there's really two pieces of that. If you use event mapping, you also have the ability to say, oh, I don't want to use the delivered handler for the event I'm placing in event mapping, that I want to use my own app package people codes. Like if you have a developer, you can go to town on the criteria, et cetera, to control whether that notification is actually sent or not. But the simple one is exactly what you just said, is that, you can hook it up to a button when the user clicks this button, whether it's a save button or some other application button, or even a field, that it could actually trigger a notification once that occurs, once they actually press save. But if you need any special logic around that's where you would have to write application package people code. One thing I'll mention, because you mentioned change tracking notifications, the good thing about it's very similar, but it's leveraging Notification Composer, but it does allow you to specify the criteria. You can specify thresholds. You can say when the value changes from this to this, somebody made a change in correction mode. It actually builds on what Notification Composer does and all the bells and whistles like in-app email and text, but it allows you to define all the criteria, like, maybe you want to track when someone gives a salary increase that's greater than 40%. The comp administrator gets that's outside the boundary, so that you could set that threshold. So it's a great auditing tool, compliance tool, keeping up with who's making changes in correction mode, et cetera, et cetera. So the possibilities are endless now.
Yes, yes. And the key that you said there with change tracking was that it isn't just change tracking, meaning track every change. It's that now it's criteria driven. So you can use the component buffer to make the decision, what data do I want to notify? I'm not notifying every change. I'm only notifying when the CEO's direct deposit information changes, for example. Yes. Right. Other topics here in the PUM 51 of interest?
I think those are really the main two. I will say that another big thing that came into that image was for global payroll and absence management customers, the ability to do, really a rapid calculation. So Payroll for North America, our other payroll product, actually delivered something quite a while back, and it was a very popular feature. And then, a lot of Payroll for North America customers use absence management and say, oh, I want that feature, because I use absence management. So we made the decision to allow global payroll as well as absence management leverage those same capabilities. So that's another really big one that also leverages event mapping, and it has a unique little floating button that let's say that I want on this page, to be able to do a quick count. I made a change to job data, or I made a change to this or that. You can go and configure it. It uses event mapping, and then all of a sudden there's a rapid calculation button that comes at the bottom of the page that you could actually go and do the rapid calculation on it straight from the place where you made the change. So it's a very configurable feature and brings a lot of power to both payroll and absence management.
Yeah, thank you. There was something else here I noticed, and that was on several of these. So this goes back to PeopleTools A57, the first release to have drop zones, and A58, the first release to have classic drop zones. And I remember when 858 came out, and I looked at the very first PUM, HCM PUM that came out after that, and I was like, oh, we get classic drop zones. Okay, now I'm going to do a search for all classic components, all classic pages that have drop zones. I found 2. And I remember reaching out to Strategy asking, because Fluid, I was shocked. Okay, A57 with drop zones. And when the HCM PUM image came out, it looked like the HCM team had littered Fluid with drop zones. And I absolutely loved it because it gave us so much flexibility. When Classic came out, I kind of looked and went, seems like they're taking a different approach. And the guidance I received from product strategy was that any component destined for Fluid will get drop zones when it is migrated to Fluid. Rather than taking the resources and modifying the existing Classic, we're going to save that and invest the resources elsewhere and then apply the drop zones when we get to Fluid. Okay, makes total sense. But with this document, I am seeing drop zones in some Classic pages. So I wondered, what is that saying? Has the strategy focus changed, or is that telling us something about these Classic pages?
Okay, that's a great question. And I'm going to use one of your words. It's the first time we actually litter. We littered, fluid. I like that term. I've never heard that before. We littered drop zones. That's great. So our approach for fluid, I'll start with there, and then I'll switch over to classic. For fluid, we basically made the decision. Look, you always have to put a drop zone at the top, the bottom, and then hopefully the middle of the page. Or maybe multiple places depending on things you hear from customers. So that's kind of our overall approach for any new transaction we deliver in Fluid, and we went and updated every Fluid page to have those. I think there were a few exceptions. I think profile management is already kind of a flex field tool. So for lack of a better word, so it didn't really make sense to go crazy in a flex field framework already. So I think that was one of the exceptions. When we get to Classic, because Classic is not responsive design, we were much more limited because Classic does not really reclaim white space very easily and gracefully is probably the best word to say. So we limited it to pages we knew that are transactions that customers have customizations and only put it at the bottom of the page. And it was very select. In HCM, it was like the company table, department table, location table. What we found over time is that we were getting requests, I need one here, I need one there in Classic, and we've added those. That does not mean that those transactions will never move to Fluid. I'll give an example as this is safe harbor, forward-looking statement, is that basically we will have drop zones in the Classic version of the federal PAR process, even though we actually have a Fluid version of that because some customers have not actually implemented Fluid yet. So we do make exceptions. We also deliver drop zones in the contract data. Someday that may move to Fluid. I wouldn't use, if we deliver a drop zone, it means it's never going to move to Fluid. It just means right now it's not going to, but that doesn't preclude it in the future. We never really base on, what are the transactions we'll never migrate, because there's customers now that want to retool their customizations and do them, the right way, which is using event mapping, drop zones, page and field configurator, and being able to undo those without a drop zone sometimes is very difficult. So that's why we're still investing in bringing drop zones whenever we get the request as much as possible. It's actually pretty easy. And so I would encourage customers to log idea space entries on where they still need drop zones. We'll definitely consider it because it's actually fairly easy for us to deliver those changes.
And I agree. I agree that it's fairly easy, and that's why I was surprised when I saw so few. But thank you for the clarification, because as I was looking at this list, I was thinking in my mind what I'd heard before, and that was, if it's on the Fluid roadmap, then we're waiting. And what you clarified there was, well, maybe not. Maybe we're going to add some drop zones on some Classic, even though it's migrating. So I love that. Thank you for that. Which leads me to another question that I have, and this is future direction. And that is, we've seen adoption of frameworks for configuration by the apps teams when they deliver products. Let me explain that. Take Fluid job data, for example. Fluid job data drastically different from, in my opinion, Classic job data in the way it was delivered. And that is, Classic job data, obviously delivered before all these frameworks. So any changes were clearly customizations. Now, yes, we have event mapping, page field configurator, so it's the potential in Classic job data to leverage some of those features. But Fluid job data, you might say, is like one of the first major components built after those frameworks. And so it looked like Fluid job data was built around the, Lego style concept, where a customer would implement Fluid job data with page and field configurator and event mapping and drop zones. And that, when you look at the PUM image, it's almost like you wouldn't go live unless you had done some of that. And I was just kind of curious, as a strategic direction, what's Oracle's plan there for future components?
Okay. It's a good question. I'll touch on a little bit. So Fluid job data also has like a transaction summary framework. Some of our best ideas come as we're like, rethinking and modernizing classic transactions to move to fluid. And one of the top issues that we got from customers, hey, I'd really like to be able to review the before and after value of what I've done. I mean, it's a, multi-transaction. Today in Classic, it's like I don't know, like 10 transactions in one, 10 pages in one. And you may forget what you did on page 1 versus page 2 before you actually click on save. And there's like, okay, what did I do? It's been 15 minutes and I can't remember what I did. I'm getting older, so I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning or if I had breakfast. So this allows you to actually see the before and after values or things you change so you can review them before you actually submit. So that was a framework we delivered that now, we use in almost every fluid transaction that we deliver. So those ideas that come up about, hey, this would really be good for us internally, but, potentially externally. I mean, customers build their own transactions. The other thing that we did with fluid job data is we not only did drop zones in the top, middle, and bottom of every page, which with fluid job data, it's in an activity guide. We also went a little bit further and made a concept of drop zone steps, basically, which is really just a blank page with a drop zone on it. You can do whatever you want. Say what the label is. We use your configuration that you do within Page and Field Configurator about whether to display it. So you can embed whatever you want directly in our Fluid Job Data Activity Guide, using Page and Field Configurator. And drop zones. So it's those kind of things are what kind of lead to additional framework capabilities. As far as like the future, again, forward-looking statement, safe harbor, is that one of the popular features, and Nicole is going to love this, is that we have HR notifications. And we have the announcement feature. So every customer that has financials or another pillar besides HCM is like, I want that. I want that. You bring that to me. So that's coming. I can't really say when. It'll be in the next 18 months, but it's something that, we decided that, hey, it's a great framework. It's been around for a long time. Nicole and her teams have put it through the test. We know it's production ready. The Army has been using it. So we think it's ready. So it's going to move into enterprise components long term so that all customers can actually leverage it. And we're taking the time to fluidize and rethink, just like we do with every transaction, and improve it as well. So a lot of improvements above and beyond what we have today, and a lot more options. So it's one of the frameworks we're investing in right now to basically bring it to all of PeopleSoft.
That's fantastic. So as you were talking, I was thinking about my team as another example of one of those that has multiple pages with drop zone regions.
Yes.
And the thing that I noticed about it, and you might say the same thing with job data, and it started making me think, wait, is there again another way to refactor and generalize? And that is that as I'm looking at these, obviously I approach everything as from a developer perspective, and then Nicole, I suspect you approach everything from the functional perspective, and that is, yeah. How do you accomplish that task from a functional side? And I come at it from the opposite. So, for example, if somebody comes to me and says, "Can you mask this field?" I say, "Absolutely, 100%." First, I start with Page and Field Configurator, and if I can't do it there, I go to event mapping. I don't even think about the fact that HCM has a data masking framework built in with a PII registry. I don't even know that because I'm more focused on the technical side. And same thing with my team. When I saw the retooling of my team where it went from one long page to multiple pages with the drop zones embedded in with sections, I discovered there is a HCM specific configuration page for my team. And is it a nav collection or an activity guide for actually doing the configuration for my team? Job data, I saw it has its own little section for doing the configuration around job data also. And I'm just wondering, from a customer perspective, is that just something that we should be keeping up on the video feature overviews and release notes to identify when these change? You know what I'm saying?
I do. I do. So it's a great point you bring up. The highlights videos are fantastic.
Hmm.
And, unfortunately, we deliver so much that not everything can go into the
Hmm.
highlights video. And so we rely on blogs, conferences, word of mouth. And so, sometimes maybe we haven't marketed enough. Customers may never see it. Exactly what you just said. So we're trying to take a step back and look at, okay, what features do need to go into the highlights video, and for the ones that are not, how are we going to get the word out? Is the resolution text in PeopleSoft Update Manager enough? And a lot of times the answer is no. So we lean on the strategist to actually write a blog to talk about it more. It's in the documentation, but I never read documentation. I always think that it should be simple enough for me to do it without reading the instructions, and so sometimes that affects me knowing about things. But just opening up more channels to talk about it. So conferences, blogs, that's kind of what we're doing now. For every image, trying to figure out, okay, how do we get the word of mouth out about this because it did not make the highlights.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. For me, on the data masking one, I was masking date of birth on the personal information modify a person. And I just had a guess. Person birth date is the field that you would mask. And I thought, I'm just going to check this out. I'm going to open it in App Designer, the page, and I saw that it had a derived work field with HC overly mask or something for the field name. Now, what? What is that and where does this come from? I need to drill into this and figure out more about, from the apps side, the features, the configuration features. Because what I tell customers is, page field configurator event mapping drop zones are isolation strategies. They're not known, when you and I build a solution on that, Oracle doesn't know about that solution that we build. So even though it's easier to get current because there's no conflict, there is still the potential for Oracle to change the component in a way that breaks those features. And that's page field configurator has the a validate configuration button, which is fantastic. It'll help you identify those things. But if where Oracle delivers a framework such as data masking, if you and I use that and something breaks after getting current, that's a My Oracle support issue because that's 100% a delivered component. Versus when you and I create something in page field configurator, or I should say customers create something in page field configurator, if it's broken, we still might be able to get some support from My Oracle support, but it's still our change. Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. Another thing I was thinking of on fluid job data, and this came up last week as I was working with a customer, and that was, we were looking at, I was just talking to them about differences between, they wanted a section on configurable search. And so we were looking at different components, and I was just kind of giving them a little test. It pulled up a component. I said, is this configurable search? Yes or no? And obviously every classic component today by default is using configurable search. If you're on PeopleTools 8.6.0 or later, it's not an option, unless I missed something. But I pulled up fluid job data and I asked them the question, is this configurable search? No, exactly. The answer is no, it is not configurable search. And
It sure looks like it, but it's not.
exactly. But what's funny is it is a configurable search. It's just not the configurable search.
Well, I like
Because
to think of it the opposite because HCM had it first. So HCM configurable search is the configurable search. But I'm just joking. So basically, what happened there, if I just can jump in, is that when we were doing the fluidization of job, we did not have PeopleTools 8.6.0. Basically, it was like our number one thing is customers need to be able to search on other fields and add in the things that are important, like job title, or I need their preferred name as well as their legal name. I mean, there's all kinds of things that customers wanted, and they don't want to have to customize a search page or search record. And so we implemented HCM configurable search. It was such a popular idea, and when some of the executives like Paco Abrawan saw it, as like, I want that in PeopleTools. That that it has long-reaching effects, and that needs to be everywhere if we can do it. And so it came to life. So that's the framework in HCM that we only did. We also have what's called shared components. And that's like it's the HCM version of enterprise components that's only for all the HCM product lines to leverage. So it moved from shared components into PeopleTools. Of course, they added a lot more bells and whistles on than we had. It's a source of confusion. And at this point, it's not worth us ripping out HCM Configurable Search, but we're not adding any more transactions that actually use HCM Configurable Search. The problem is that, if you require a configurable search, it means that you have to be on PeopleTools 860. And so if we basically make it dependent on PeopleTools 860, it means a lot of customers wouldn't be able to leverage functionality. So that's why for a bit, we actually continued to use HCM Configurable Search, but now we're not doing that anymore. So any new feature that we deliver, we're going to try to use a search page that can actually be configured, with PeopleTools Configurable Search.
That's cool. I like that. Thank you. Thanks for that history on that. I was looking at that thinking, I wonder how this would change, if Configurable Search had come out first. But yeah, that makes sense. Another thing too on that is I was thinking back to the CRM product and it had a quote configurable search for CRM also. Right. So that may have been like the first configurable search was the CRM product. So I wanted to ask you about a little bit more on future and the PeopleTools 862 release coming out soon. And we just talked about in a prior podcast about the expected features. We're just looking at the document. And then Graham recently was in India with you, actually,
Yes.
at the conference there. And he shared that he saw a lot of what's coming with the apps and with PeopleTools 862. And the one that I think stands out the most is the dynamic home pages. And the precursor for that was the regions or sections within the home pages, which I wasn't really excited about. But this dynamic homepage thing is interesting. And at this point, for a lot of us, it's very conceptual. It's abstract. We don't know exactly what that means. And I wondered if you could take a few moments to share what that might look like from an HCM perspective.
Sure. Again, safe harbor, forward-looking statement. So PeopleTools 862 is imminent. That's the first thing I can say. If you look at some of the MOS documents about, I think we just updated PeopleTools 861. So that should tell you, something's about to happen. That's about the most I can say. And what PeopleTools 862 does is it really takes the concepts from the sections that you talked about with PeopleTools 861 and actually puts it on steroids. So with the section feature from PeopleTools 861 combined with the ability to style individual objects, whether it's a homepage object, whether it's a section, whether it's a tile, now you can make it look completely different. It has a lot of capabilities that you don't get without having a heavy-duty CSS developer that can jump in and just change the world. So I'm sure, Jim, you could probably do that. But basically, for your technical people that have CSS skills, you'll now be able to style the homepage to look completely different. So that's what you'll get if you actually upgrade an existing HCM FSCM environment to PeopleTools 862. What you get when the application releases on 862 is a whole nother ballgame. So what we're pitching now, and I don't want to steal too much of our thunder from Blueprint, but basically we're looking at a single homepage experience that we're calling the PeopleSoft landing page that basically uses all those concepts I just talked about, sections and styling, to actually bring a more welcoming, inviting experience to users, much more modern. You can embed a lot more content and helpful information about how to guide users, whether it's your casual user that's in there once upon a blue moon, or somebody in the administrative area, like helping them do their everyday work. So we're bringing a lot of sample sections and content that customers can either use out of the box or use to really build out their own experience. And we know full well that, we may deliver something and, there may be a handful of customers that use it as is, but really the beauty of PeopleSoft, I can take that and, make it my own. So now you have complete like save as capability. So when we deliver a landing page, which is a homepage object, you can easily do a save as without having to copy it over to another portal, rename it, bring it back in with a different name. So everything we deliver now is so much easier to actually save, so you don't change the delivered, and basically make tweaks to it and use it on your own homepage, or if you decide to go to the landing page concept, you could use it on your new landing page. So all those capabilities will really bring the ability to show additional content. Let me just give some examples. Is we're looking at something called pick up where you left off. So a casual user goes in and starts the open enrollment process, which was, nobody goes in once typically and is able to do everything in one sitting unless you're not going to make any changes. It's like, let me think on this. I don't know if I want to switch plans. I don't know if I'm, ready to switch to a whole different vendor, and you do a save. So that basically means you started the process, but you didn't finish it. You hit the exit button and you're going to come back later. Well, with these concepts now, we're actually triggering notifications that actually allow us to leverage that notification and actually display it directly on the new landing page that basically as soon as you log in, continue with. And it's like a one click to go straight to where you were in open enrollment. So that's just like one of the many concepts that we're looking at I can talk about today. Like I said, I don't want to steal our thunder in Blueprint in June, but a lot of different concepts like that are what we're working on to help guide users more to their work.
Yeah. So pick up where you left off. That sounds amazing. So if I'm understanding this correctly, because you mentioned the styling, which is something that you will get instantly when you upgrade to 8.6.2, is the ability to style and transform the appearance. But the piece that I guess I have to wait for Blueprint for is the dynamic content that we're going to see in that. And I think what you just said is that pick up where you left off may be one of those dynamic pieces of content that I would see there. That is so cool. So I'm thinking, for example, onboarding, offboarding, life events, all of these, and the thing that in my mind, maybe they're all activity guide based. So do you see the pick up where you left off being an activity guide concept?
It's a mix. So anywhere where we have a save as draft, like absence management allows you to start a jury duty request, and then you realize, I have to add an attachment. Let me save this for later, come back later, add my attachment and submit it. So anywhere where we have a save as draft or save for later, so like expenses, for example, on the FSCM side has a, save for later. So all those places, whether it's an activity guide or we already have implemented a save as draft, save for later, those are all candidates for things. And actually, I can go ahead and say, because I have a blog coming out about the rolling tenure support, which I'm sure we'll talk about. It actually says some of what we're delivering. So I think I'm at liberty now because that blog is imminent. Is that it's suggested actions. So suggestions on the homepage that we get from metadata in the application. And then continue with is what we're calling pick up where you left off. Of course, announcements. Quick links to things that most users use, my work that basically allows you to organize your work as a manager, recruiter, instructor, billing clerk, what have you. So it's a whole different experience now with the landing page. So we're really, really excited to show it at Blueprint. So that's why we're trying to be a little bit more tight-lipped so that we, blow everybody away at Blueprint.
Yes, I am definitely looking forward to Blueprint this year in Vegas for the announcements, because 8.6.2 is like, I'm assuming before that, just conference wise and schedule wise. I mean, that's what I would expect was all of these announcements at Blueprint based off of 8.6.2. You mentioned a couple of things there that I do want to talk about, forward thinking and career advice thinking. So one of them is forward thinking. You mentioned some intelligence built into the app there. as to frequently used items, suggested items based off of others' uses or even my own usage. And we see that today even in the search framework and the search results, the things being categorized. So people talk about artificial intelligence and AI, generative AI in a variety of different ways. But in my definition, artificial intelligence is basically in your algorithm that makes a suggestion for you that helps you out. Google Suggests, for example, even could be that simple. But we see some movement, especially in cloud apps, where they're talking about using generative AI to classify transactions in advance for you, to help and assist with transactions. And it isn't that AI is replacing the worker, but rather that AI is making it easier for the worker by reducing some of the manual tasks, by basically automating the repetitive tasks. What is Oracle, or shall we say PeopleSoft's direction in regards to that style of AI and generative AI?
Okay. And I will say just a little bit more about, I said suggested actions. That is not based off of AI. Really, the only AI that we've delivered out of the box so far are Picasso,
Right.
where we have models for all the digital assistants that we have across the board in HCM, FSCM, and campus solutions. And but that's not really generative AI or Gen AI. The only thing that we've delivered beyond that is in Cloud Manager that allows you to scale up and scale down. And really, our overall approach is, most customers today are very interested in Gen AI, but if you want delivered out of the box capabilities that tap into Gen AI and do some of the things that you were just mentioning, helping users run the business, that's more of a cloud apps opportunity rather than on-prem with PeopleSoft. However, what our strategy is really, PeopleSoft today is really a platform for AI. We've had the machine language framework for really since 858. If you do the math, that was like 8 years ago, I think. My brain might not be able to do the math. So we've had it for a long time, but a lot of customers didn't know about it or weren't ready. But we've had those possibilities in PeopleSoft for quite some time. Then we delivered Picasso, so we've stepped incrementally into it. But that's pretty much where it stops as far as like out of the box, at least right now, Gen AI capabilities out of the box. It's more about leveraging Picasso, because with Picasso, it means you're on OCI and you can actually tap into the OCI services that they provide. Or you could actually, there's another path, you can actually do it straight with People Code. We know customers that have actually called ChatGPT straight from People Code. So we say that PeopleSoft is a platform for Gen AI, and we're going to continue to invest to make it easier to actually tap into Gen AI, because we realize that it's something important to a lot of customers. To supplement that, really what we're trying to do is market what others have done. So in the Innovators Report, we've created, or we are creating, a new category around AI to kind of market what customers have done. And also there's a lot of partners that have built solutions around AI. And to supplement that, we're planning to do POCs that we actually post like a how-to document using PeopleSoft as the platform for AI to accomplish a lot of the things that customers, want. So that's kind of our overall strategy, is actually making it easier, to use PeopleSoft with AI. The other thing too that we've heard from multiple customers is, we mentioned drop zones earlier, but a lot of times those drop zones are not in the right place. Right? You want a button right next to your content that you can actually, the magic button that you call, that has the wand that you can call AI and pass it information from PeopleSoft and have it return things like summarizing your goals, in e-performance, or taking all the feedback that you've gotten and rewriting it so it looks nice. Rewriting a job posting before you actually, move it to production for applicants to search on. All those things that are things customers are interested in. Many customers have already done that with PeopleSoft. So we're going to try to do a better job about marketing what customers have done and how they did it. We have a great session at Blueprint around just that. There's a 45-minute session, I think it's either on Tuesday or Wednesday, that Alex Mann, our Vice President of Development, group vice president of development, is actually going to host, and we're going to have several customers come and talk about what they've done. So a lot of exciting things are coming, and a lot of excitement around this space. And again, we're investing to make it easier and giving you more information about how to tap into the PeopleSoft capabilities if you're ready, to do more around AI.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. I liked what you said there about PeopleSoft being the platform. And you mentioned 858, and that, to me, that ties in really closely with application services framework, which 857 started to see that, and the early HCM digital assistants, then Picasso, and then 859 being the real application services framework release. Another thing you mentioned there that I thought was so cool was the Gen AI with texting, because I know that's something that's very common for me is I'll type something up and think, I wonder if I could say this better. So I'll grab that and throw that into some sort of generative AI text. And then, like you said, using drop zones with a button. So you put a button next to each one of these text fields that says, make this text better or improve this text. Give me suggestions about this text. That's pretty cool, like the job openings and the performance appraisals, things like that. I also, just this morning, saw this note from Arvin from Astute, where they are talking about how they're using AI with financials to do a lot of that cloud-like generative AI concepts. And I think the approach you're taking, I think it makes a lot of sense. And that is, PeopleSoft is a fantastic, amazing transaction processing solution. And so I think it's important to stay in your core competencies, focus on those. So rather than building out all of the AI solutions yourself, instead, making it possible for partners such as Astute to plug in to the AI themselves or for customers. Thank you. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about, and this comes up a lot with today more, I guess, than in the past, and that is if we look at the project load for PeopleSoft consultants and the labor market for PeopleSoft. First off, I'll say that I'm hearing about new PeopleSoft positions opening all the time. I hear about people hiring brand new PeopleSoft employees. I train regularly brand new PeopleSoft developers all the time. So it's not like there's a shortage of jobs, but there does seem to be a shift. And that is that there was a time, obviously, when there were a ton of PeopleSoft implementations and there were lots of multi-year projects for implementations. And people regularly ask me, what's the future of PeopleSoft? And you kind of mentioned this already, Russell. You mentioned your blog and the 10-year rolling. So just a question that people ask, what is the future with PeopleSoft? Do I still have a marketable skill with PeopleSoft?
Okay. It's a complex question with a complex answer. So, yeah, we just last week, actually, I think it was almost a week and a half ago, renewed the 10-year rolling support. I have a blog that'll be out hopefully in the next day that will explain more about what we're working on and have like links to the last several image highlights. And then in that blog, you'll see that in the last year, I can't remember the number. As I said, I can't remember what I had for breakfast. I just wrote this blog 2 days ago and I can't remember what's in it. That's like getting old. Is the number of features we've delivered, the number of ideas from the idea space that we've implemented just in the last year. I think it was over 300 customer ideas across all of PeopleSoft we delivered in a year. So, PeopleSoft is thriving. PeopleSoft delivers new capabilities, both from a functional perspective, as well as new technology, like the notification composer framework. All those present opportunities for add-on business. And plus also is that, we have a number of new customers every year, especially in Asia, is what we're seeing is that there's some major new customers in Asia. And, we're not talking about just 2,500 employees. It's like hundreds of thousands of employees, some of the organizations still buying our software. So PeopleSoft is live and well. And really, when we started doing the Apps Unlimited strategy and actually formulated this 10-year rolling support, the idea is, yes, we're still investing in PeopleSoft. Now, will it have the investment that the cloud applications have? No. But I mean, we're doing lots of things, as you'll see from the blog that's about to come out about the number of features. And it's not just in the last 12 months. We've been doing this ever since we implemented, PeopleSoft Update Manager and the 10-year rolling support policy. We've delivered many features, since then. It's thousands and thousands. So, we're continuing to invest. And the main reason why we're doing that is, we believe that every customer at some point will adopt something in cloud, whether it's moving to OCI and tapping into, the infrastructure, or, maybe they want to, jump into AI and can go to OCI and tap into the Gen AI services that are provided with OCI, or to enhance their security and leverage a lot of the cloud apps technology. So there's also, of course, cloud applications. If you're really ready to completely re-engineer your business, there's lots of reasons, and every reason is unique to a customer. Some want the shiny new thing. Others, there's a pain point that they can't resolve in PeopleSoft, or maybe they've just customized so much that basically pulling all that out and doing it the right way is a re-implementation. And maybe that's the right time to look at cloud apps. As I said, or the other thing I'll just say is that we don't have data centers everywhere, so that prevents some customers, especially in Asia, moving to cloud apps. Or maybe it's an industry like banking that's heavily regulated and they're not quite ready to give over the reins to somebody else to hold their data. There's lots of reasons depending on the business, the organization, what their policies are, what their degree of change management that they will accept. So everybody's different. So we're here to continue to invest in PeopleSoft and make it a viable application until you're ready, to transition to the cloud when and if.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fascinating what you just said. It wasn't just, oh, we've picked up a few small customers. We've picked up some huge customers. And I think that's a part of the conversation that we're not hearing, or it isn't getting shared enough. Because what we hear is people talking to other people, hearing, oh, we're moving to Oracle Cloud, we're moving to Workday. And so the thought is, every time you hear that someone's leaving, the thought is, well, the community just got smaller. And what I'm hearing though from others though is that the PeopleSoft community size hasn't really changed. I don't know, even going back as far as the Oracle acquisition, there's just been so much movement, but the size of the economy is still very similar. And I mean, maybe, I don't know, that's been my feeling from talking to people.
Yeah, I mean, our strategy is working because people are staying with Oracle, whether it's the cloud infrastructure, cloud apps, and, I mean, selfishly, of course, I want people to stay with PeopleSoft, but, that doesn't necessarily work with every organization for a number of reasons, like I just mentioned.
Yeah.
But yes, I think there's a lot more excitement around PeopleSoft. I mean, our conference numbers have been up. Or last year it was. We'll see about this year. Hopefully the downtrend in the economy won't affect people coming to Blueprint this year. But I haven't really seen that much change. We're still delivering. I do a summary every year for our developers about the features we delivered and the legislative updates. And that number is going up, not down.
Wow.
Which is really interesting, is that I feel like we're, doing more than what we've done in the past. So I still think there's lots of opportunities for the partner community. And if you're a consultant, et cetera, is that there's new features all the time, new technology. I mean, Gen AI that we just talked about, that's a wonderful opportunity for because we're not really delivering anything out of the box, right now. And PeopleSoft, that's a huge opportunity for partners like Astute and others. So I believe that there's lots and lots of opportunities still with PeopleSoft.
Yes, I completely agree. And that's what I tell people is maybe the work is shifting. Maybe it's not long-term implementations, although you just mentioned that there are still new implementations every year of PeopleSoft applications. I love what Paco says, and that is that the largest installation in the world is the U.S. military, right? The U.S. Army.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and if I remember right, they're still working on that, right? It's not they're not done. So
Right. They've basically gone live with HR, and they're going live with, well, they're going live with payroll. I don't think I can actually say the date, but they're
right.
working on implementation now of global payroll. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And
there's
so
also Amazon is still a customer of ours. They're not on the most current release, but they're, still a customer of Oracle.
right. So these are some serious, to just use the term cornerstone customers that are going to ensure that the product is here for a very long time. I also like what you said about the increase in features, because a lot of times people say, "Oh, PeopleSoft is old, it's stale." No, no. What I find is the staleness is really a customer adoption issue more than an application issue and a delivery issue, which, mm, anyways,
And if I can add something
yeah,
maybe
go
to that
ahead.
a little bit from my perspective, which is at least in the, payroll and time and labor space. So, in the past year, maybe a little bit more, we've had two, what I would consider to be major features, things that most payroll people want, which was Quick Calc, which Russell had talked a little bit about the global payroll version of that, and OK to Pay All, which is the ability to uncheck or check on OK to Pay, which is how we pay people on the pay line. And as well, or if we just look at PUM 51 with the fluid timesheet, there's options to have the plus button on either side of the page. And all of those things are done basically with the product installation. So if I go to the product specific installation for payroll, as long as I have the patches, I can just turn these on. So I guess from my perspective as well, um, at least for these features, which to us are major, to a certain extent, implementing is incredibly minor because it's
Mm.
basically checking three buttons
Flip a switch.
or
Yeah.
less. So for us, and what I would always say, what I always try to say to other customers as well as to myself is, um, regardless of where you are on a journey to the cloud, are there things that you can do that are going to help your staff, and it could be your payroll staff, your HR staff, help them save time so that when you are in a project, that they are spending time in the project rather than doing these tasks that don't need to take as long? Or are you, even in the case of insights, are you enabling things so that things are more easily visible so that people can identify problems and resolve them? And all of those things, if you do them now, would ultimately save you time whenever you decide to do something different. Um, so whatever you do now in keeping current in some ways will help you in the future because those people can then spend time on a project.
Right. Yeah, I think whenever I talk to customers, and I'll try to hit on a couple of different things that both you and Jim said, is, in this new role that I started back in September last year, one of the common complaints I always hear, our users think, PeopleSoft looks old and, it's an old system. And, I start digging into the problem and basically, I like, well, are you using Fluid? No, we're still using classic self-service that was de-supported about, 6 or 7 years ago. I was like, aha! Yeah, it's anybody that says that PeopleSoft is if it is an old product. I mean, I will give them that. I mean, we've been around, since the 1980s, late 80s. And it's an old product. We've continued to innovate. We basically, gutted and redesigned, just like we're talking about with Fluid job data. I mean, it's not just lift and shift of Fluid, it is rethinking the user experience, looking at all the issues. How do we make it better? And we've done that with almost every single self-service transaction in PeopleSoft on the HCM and FSCM side. So if somebody says that it's old and dated, you have to question, well, what pieces are you using? Sure, classic, still looks the same, but with the what we call the classic plus branding. It looks like fluid, and sometimes I have a hard time figuring out whether it's fluid or classic until I, turn my my tablet, or if I have to pinch and zoom, and then oh yeah, okay, that's classic. So we've done things to basically marry, for lack of a better word, the UI between classic and fluid through styling, to make it look more modern. So a lot of customers are not using that. They're not using a lot of the brand new features. And, there's a lot of different reasons. I mean, maybe they've customized a lot and haven't leveraged a lot of the configuration frameworks that we've talked about, like drop zones and event mapping. And Nicole, I promise I'm leading up to what you said, is that we typically deliver a lot of features turned off. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. It's a bad thing if customers don't read blogs, don't look at the image highlights, when they're actually building their packages, or not reviewing the brand new features, not using the cumulative feature overview to kind of see, your starting point and your ending point, what the new features are, and they're not staying in touch, not in our focus groups, don't get the newsletter. There's all kinds of things where customers really don't know what they're actually bringing into their target environment, but then never migrating or never taking the time to go flip that switch on, like Nicole said about the timesheet, where now you can actually have the add and delete buttons both on the left and the right if you want, because of that horizontal scrolling. So, a lot of times it's about not knowing what's in your instance that you can actually adopt. So we provide all the tools and do the best we can to communicate, but it does require the customer to absorb a lot of the stuff that we deliver, look on our communication channels and blogs to understand what's coming, and then make a plan to adopt some of it. Now, as far as like what's going to make it easier to move to cloud, I mean, the biggest thing that I've heard from most customers is that old user experience, because they're so far behind, and maybe they've done tons of customizations and haven't evaluated whether we've actually delivered something that they can replace, a customization. So I think every customer that I've encountered is a little bit different, and maybe a combination of everything. But as far as like what to make it easier to transition, I think that's hard, because you almost have to know the differences between, cloud and PeopleSoft to really understand, well, what's going to be the difference when I migrate. The good thing is that if you have those questions, now we actually have dedicated individuals that can help with that. Is like Robin Valiadam is one person I can mention, and he is more HCM focused, but has a counterpart in financials. His main job now, one of the people that I moved into his role when he took on this role, is to actually educate customers. He's a PeopleSoft person from way back, but now he sits in the HCM cloud space and actually can help customers, look at the differences, talk about what their challenges are and what's the problem they're trying to solve by moving to cloud, and kind of tell you objectively, and not from a sales perspective, what you would get by migrating PeopleSoft to HCM Cloud. He has a lot of sessions that he's done at the regional user groups, and he also has sessions coming up at Blueprint and other places about exactly that. It's like, the things that you would get, one of them we already talked about, out of the box Gen AI capabilities that you would get by moving to HCM Cloud. But there's a lot of other things because we do a lot of innovation and a lot of investment, but they do even more on the HCM Cloud side. So I don't really have a really good answer about what you can do today, other than, stop customizing. That's going to be something you're going to have to figure out. If you're going to do it, do it the right way with event mapping and drop zones. But the more customizations you do, that's one more thing you're going to have to evaluate. It's like, okay, well, does the cloud app actually do this? And are we going to have to carry this customization forward? And how are we going to do that? Is it going to be in the integration layer? Is it going to be something else? So, sometimes you can't necessarily, it may not solve all your problems, because you may have, let's say that you have some specialized features that, PeopleSoft doesn't provide, that you've actually built with PeopleTools, and you need that. It's core to your business. And if the cloud app doesn't have it and you move to cloud, what are you going to do for that piece that you don't have? So you're actually trading one thing for another. So it's a lot of things to think about. And, Robin can help with that discussion for customers that are serious about wanting to look at the differences between the two.
Thank you for talking about Robin's new role as well. But I think to summarize, one of the things you said there, or a couple of those points, is getting current is a way that we, as you might say, combat that PeopleSoft is old. It's kind of funny because you could say the same thing about a Corvette. You could say that Corvettes are very old because they've been around for a very long time. But you don't look at a 2025 Corvette and say, wow, that's an old Corvette. And you could look at I guess you might say difference is if you look at a 70s Corvette, you'd say, wow, that's a beautiful classic. I don't know that anyone says that about PeopleSoft 7.5, but anyways, we can certainly look
Speak for yourself.
There you go. That's beautiful. But we can certainly say that, you can be driving a 90s PeopleSoft, or you could be driving a 2025 PeopleSoft, and you really have the choice yourself. And when you say that you think PeopleSoft is old, well, did you choose to continue driving that 90s PeopleSoft, or have you chosen to adopt the modern PeopleSoft to make it more like the 2025 Corvette? You certainly have options. And I love what Paco said in the past is it's selective adoption, which means you can selectively adopt to be modern on parts of PeopleSoft and still be driving the old PeopleSoft on other parts with selective adoption. Anything else that either one of you would like to discuss?
Keep voting up ideas.
Go ahead.
I guess that's what I would say is I think what I personally have seen is that many good features have come straight from the idea space and have been really very much improved by the comments from the focus group. So if there's something that you've customized or something that you haven't customized that you can't afford to customize that you want to see, please create ideas because people do look, we do vote on it, and we do comment. So, and that's where I think some of the best features have been coming from, or all my ideas, frankly. Just vote my idea.
Yeah, I will concur. I think a lot of good stuff has come out of the idea space. And you're right, is that, you start with an idea and then you get, collaboration from multiple customers across different industries, which is what the focus group is all about, is pulling people from, different roles, different organizations, different perspectives. And it really brings together a much more solid, idea for us to implement. I completely agree. It's a great way to get your idea marketed and get other people to vote on it. So we do look at how many customers have actually voted on the idea, and we do look at that at like our roadmap sessions where we're trying to decide what to bring into a future update image. We have certain things we have to do like legs regs. We have technology adoption like we see with PeopleTools 862. And the landing page that I talked about. But then there's also, feature function enrichment is probably the word I'll use of, how do we either bring like a brand new feature or improve one that we previously delivered? And a lot of that comes from the idea space. So a significant portion. If you look at the highlights video, we actually identify every single idea that originated in the idea space. And as a general rule, the main reason why we can't put everything into the highlights videos, we almost always will include everything that came from the idea space in the update image highlights, even if there's something else that has to drop off, that's our way of marketing that, hey, we got this idea, it didn't come internally, it came from the idea space. So those almost always go in our update image highlights.
Fantastic. Anything else to add?
I will say the new landing page, once you actually see it at Blueprint, no user will believe that it's PeopleSoft anymore. So that's why we're so excited about it. It's, what we deliver will be an example that customers can implement out of the box or use as kind of like a launching pad to build whatever they want, for their users. But it's an opportunity to completely modernize the user experience. Based on all the feedback we've gotten. I've shown it to a lot of customers over the last 3 or 4 months, like our early prototypes. And everybody's like, oh, I'm stopping my 861 upgrade. I want to wait for this. I'm going to wait for 862.
Mm,
So if you're midstream, I would definitely take a look at all the great things that are coming in 862. We didn't even really talk about them all today. I mean, smart
mhm,
prompts and smart drop downs. Those will be things that users will love that do data entry. There's lots of capabilities in 862 that are worth waiting on.
mm, mm. Well, thank you both for joining me for this podcast to talk about not only just HCM, but in HCM PUM 51, but also future direction and how that relates to PeopleTools and so many other PeopleSoft concepts that are important to the PeopleSoft community. Thank you.